Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you and Senator Stabenow for holding the hearing today and for a great panel and multiple panels today on an important subject, which is the next Farm Bill. I especially want to thank Kevin Scott for being here, representing the American Soybean Association, a multi-generation South Dakota farmer going back to 1885. I think the family operation has roots, and he always provides great counsel and insight and advice to me and my staff and to all of South Dakota when it comes to the issues that are important to agriculture and to our country, I might add. So welcome. Good to have you here, Kevin. Let me just ask a question that has to do with the commodity title of the next Farm Bill. And the first question has to do with something that the National Corn Grower said in their testimony today. I think Mr. Rohr indicated that there should be clear statutory language requiring financial assistance to be determined by physical location of a farm. So the question is, and I agree with that statement completely and would point out that I've got a bill, a Commodity Title Improvement Act bill that I introduced earlier this year that does include specific language that requires physical location of the farm to be used to calculate payments. Does everyone here on the panel agree that the commodity title payment should be calculated using a farm's physical location instead of according to administrative county?
Yes, sir. We do.
Anybody disagree with that? Okay. I've also introduced a bill that would create a short-term 3 to 5 year easement program, which I've named the Soil Health and Income Protection Program, or SHIP. And the question is, do you think that in today's short-term, or I should say in today's price environment, that there's a need for such a short-term easement program with very flexible hay and grazing provisions that provide a reasonable alternative to cropping and placing expensive inputs on the poorest land on a farm?
Conservation is always very, very important, and with the weather patterns that are becoming more and more variable, some flexibility probably has its place.
Yeah.
And the current CRP, of course, is a 10-year contract, and that, for some people, is daunting. For me, I may not farm for 10 years. I may, but a short-term, short-year span would probably fit in more situations than the long-term one.
Thank you, Senator. Our board has very much targeted as working lands conservation as a priority with us to try to work with those types of programs there, but then also targeted areas with longer-term possibilities in those areas to try to put sensitive lands, highly erodible lands into better conservation programs. That's where we stand.
Thank you, Senator. Conservation is always one of the highest priorities, and I think the short-term help that you're talking about would be very helpful to take sensitive land and less productive land and allow it for better use.
Thanks.
In relation to the rice industry, I believe that we are only producing rice on the most highly productive land for rice, but in the other areas that you speak of, it sounds like very important legislation.
Yeah. I also, as part of a recently introduced bill, included a provision that would require mandatory base updates using the planted and considered or prevented planted acres during the years 2014 to 2017. The bill also eliminates generic base acres that were created in the 2014 Farm Bill but leaves stacks in place. According to CBO, the mandatory base update saves $466 million, and the elimination of generic base acres saves $2.454 billion over 10 years, that again according to CBO. Although I believe that calculating any future Farm Bill commodity title payments that use base acres in the calculation should use a mandatory base update, I don't expect the commodity organizations to support this. But I do want to ask all of you the question about whether or not you think a change like that would make sense. I mean, do you believe that eliminating commodity title payments on land with base acres that has not been planted to a commodity crop in the years 2014 to 2017 would be good policy and should be pursued in the next Farm Bill?
Corn growers heard about this proposal of yours, sir, as our delegates were meeting here in Washington last week, and not having it as a new idea, we hadn't looked at all ramifications and this type thing, and so it was referred to our risk management action team to be looking into, to study just exactly how it would affect corn growers, and we will be working through that so as to decide where our position should be.
Okay, thanks.
Senator, you're also ahead of us on the soybean side. We have not also looked at the ramifications as closely as we could. I know you're thinking about things and trying to improve the program, and appreciate the effort. Keep it up. Keep making new ideas.
Okay, well, we'll take that for now until you get to yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. It's something that initially our board has come out for a voluntary update, but the concern that we would have is obviously being very export sensitive, is possible implications that could have with our export markets, and what kind of litigation could possibly be brought against us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. In regard to generic base acres, which is very sensitive to the cotton industry, they were established in the current Farm Bill because cotton was no longer a covered commodity due to the Brazil WTO case. Cotton base acres would have been no value to producers and landowners unless cotton base was reallocated to allow for support on covered commodities on these planted acres. Generic base was never intended to be a long-term policy, and it should be dealt with in the next Farm Bill, if not before. There are various ways to convert generic base back to cotton or cottonseed base, and possibly other covered commodity bases, and the cotton industry is evaluating these options to help develop industry regulations. We all agree, though, that the crop bases should be decoupled in the next Farm Bill.
Thanks.
Over the years that you speak of, the price of rice declined, and farmers should not be punished for following market signals and maybe not planting as many acres of their base during that particular time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just think that base acres ought to reflect more recent planting history, and that we shouldn't be, we shouldn't have base acres that haven't been farmed for years that still have bases and receiving payments. And I think there's some examples where that happens, and I think this would be a real dollar saver, be more efficient, and I think be a better farm policy. So I hope in your organizations will take a look at it and give us some feedback. Thank you.